Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Monday, April 28th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will see a high of 69 degrees and a low around 53 degrees, feeling quite mild for late April. Coming up on the show, we'll examine the challenges European countries are facing as they significantly increase their defense spending, particularly the difficulties in integrating these efforts across different nations. We will also explore the topic of financial stress, looking into why individual resilience alone is often insufficient to cope with broader economic pressures and systemic issues impacting personal finances. Stay tuned for insights into these stories and more, coming up next on Alex's News. We're turning now to international security, specifically Europe's efforts to bolster its defenses. It seems European nations are opening their wallets wide for military spending, but getting everyone on the same page is proving a tougher battle. Joining us to break down this complex picture is our news reporter Ethan. Ethan, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here, Grace.
So Europe is spending more on defense. Just how significant is this surge we're talking about?
It's quite substantial, Grace. According to data cited by both the New York Times and Perplexity API, total military spending across Europe hit a staggering $693 billion in 2024. That represents a 17% jump from the previous year and is part of a wider global trend. It seems nations are really starting to, quote, shell out for security.
17% is a huge increase. What's driving this sudden urgency to spend?
Several factors are converging. The most immediate driver, of course, is the ongoing war in Ukraine, which has been a stark wake-up call. But there are also lingering concerns, as the New York Times points out, about the reliability of the United States as a security partner, particularly stemming from discussions during the previous Trump administration. European nations feel a growing need to take more direct ownership of their defense capabilities.
So there's the political will. Are countries putting formal commitments behind this spending push?
Absolutely. Many are aiming to meet or even exceed that NATO benchmark of spending at least 2% of their gross domestic product, THAAD, the total value of goods and services produced on defense. The New York Times reports the UK, for instance, has pledged to reach 2.5% by 2027. And the European Commission is trying to grease the wheels, proposing ideas like a potential €150 billion loan fund and using fiscal escape clauses, essentially ways to bypass budget deficit penalties, to facilitate this defense investment surge by 2030, again, according to the New York Times.
With all this money flowing, are they coordinating purchases, buying the same tanks and planes, or is it more of a free-for-all?
That's where the complexity really kicks in, Grace. Perplexity API details how national priorities are shaping spending in very different ways. Germany, for example, is focusing heavily on air defense, buying Patriot missile systems and developing its own IRIS-T system, alongside boosting ammunition production. France continues to invest heavily in its nuclear deterrent, but also in cyber capabilities, space assets, and advanced drones. Then you have Poland, which is prioritizing modernizing its army with new tanks, like the South Korean K2, and significantly boosting air defense with U.S. systems like HIMARS rocket launchers and Patriot batteries.
South Korean tanks, U.S. rockets. That doesn't sound very integrated across Europe. Is the European Union itself trying to foster more cooperation?
It is. The EU has several mechanisms aimed at exactly that, as Perplexity API reports. There's the European Defence Fund, or EDF, which funds collaborative research and development projects, hoping to spur joint investment in new tech. Then there's PESCO, a permanent structured cooperation, which allows groups of member states to commit to deeper defense integration on specific projects. And the Strategic Compass, adopted back in 2022, provides an overall roadmap for EU security ambitions.
So the structures are there, the money is there, but you mentioned complexity. What are the biggest roadblocks to actually achieving a unified European defense force?
The core challenge, highlighted by Perplexity API, is overcoming national interests that often clash with collective goals. Countries naturally want to channel defense funds into their own industries, which can lead them to pick a domestic option over a potentially more suitable, interoperable system shared with allies. We see this with Poland's significant purchases of non-EU equipment, like US F-35 jets and HIMARS, and those South Korean K-2 tanks. While addressing Poland's urgent needs, Perplexity API notes these choices raise questions about building a unified European industrial base.
And what about those big joint projects we hear about?
They illustrate the problem perfectly. Perplexity API points to the Future Combat Air System, or FCASA, a next-gen fighter jet project involving Germany, France, and Spain. It's faced major delays due to disputes over workshare and technology rights, largely driven by competing industrial interests between Paris and Berlin. Similarly, the Main Ground Combat System, a Franco-German plan for a new tank, is struggling to align different military requirements and industrial strategies. It seems getting everyone to tank together is harder than expected. Even coordinating air defense faces hurdles because countries have different existing systems.
So, Ethan, the takeaway seems to be that while Europe has found the resolve to spend significantly more on defense, actually translating those euros into truly integrated, effective collective power is a much more difficult maneuver.
Exactly, Grace. As reported by both the New York Times and Perplexity API, the political decision to increase budgets, driven by real security concerns, might have been the easier part. Overcoming decades of national procurement habits, industrial competition, and divergent strategic needs to build something truly unified and autonomous remains a massive, ongoing challenge for Europe.
A complex picture indeed. Ethan, thank you for breaking that down for us. Turning now to a topic that hits close to home for many, the connection between our finances and our mental well-being. It's something we often feel but maybe don't always talk about. Joining us now is our reporter Chloe, who has been looking into this complex relationship. Chloe, it seems like money worries and mental health struggles often go hand in hand.
Absolutely, Grace. Reporting from sources like NPR and analysis from Perplexity API really highlights this deep connection. It's not just a one-way street. They describe it as a asterisk bidirectional relationship. Think of it like a vicious cycle. A financial stress can worsen mental health, and poor mental health can make managing finances even harder.
A bidirectional relationship, so it feeds itself. Tell us more about how financial strain impacts mental health first.
Well, Perplexity API analysis points to several impacts. Emotionally, it can lead to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and just general negativity. Cognitively, people struggle with concentration and decision-making. While some specific high percentages, like 92% reporting impaired financial decisions during mental health struggles, weren't fully confirmed in the specific studies Perplexity API reviewed, the general difficulty is well documented. What Coinder, strongly supported by data highlighted by Perplexity API, is that 86% of people dealing with both debt and mental health issues say the debt makes their mental health worse. Disturbingly, those with debt are 3 times more likely to contemplate suicide, and 46% of people managing debt also have a diagnosed mental health condition. And physically, this stress shows up as headaches, sleep problems, and stomach issues.
That is a heavy toll. And how does it work the other way around? How does poor mental health make financial situations worse?
Perplexity API notes that when someone's mental health is suffering, it can impact their ability to work effectively, maybe leading to reduced productivity or even job loss. It can also disrupt financial habits of perhaps avoiding bills or financial planning altogether. Again, while a specific figure like 93% reporting increased spending during mental health challenges wasn't directly confirmed in the readily available research Perplexity API looked at, the general link between mental state and spending behavior is certainly recognized. It creates that cycle we mentioned.
It really sounds like a tough cycle to break. So what can individuals do? Are there strategies that help manage this stress?
There are, Grace. NPR, for instance, discussed research showing that how we perceive our financial situation can be crucial. Viewing a setback as a temporary challenge, not a permanent failure, can make a big difference. NPR also shared the story of a federal worker, Michelle, highlighting the importance of acknowledging and grieving the loss of identity that can come with something like a job loss before trying to jump straight into reinventing yourself.
That makes sense. Giving yourself space to process. What else?
NPR suggests finding purpose, maybe through side hustles or volunteering, using your skills. Also, strategically managing uncertainty, setting specific times to worry and plan, rather than letting it consume you. And basic self-care is key social connections, sleep, diet. Perplexity API adds things like behavioral triage basically, prioritizing essential bills like housing and food when you feel overwhelmed, maybe automating critical payments. Mindfulness practices can also help clear your head for better decisions, and simply talking about money struggles, normalizing that conversation, can reduce the shame.
Those sound like valuable coping mechanisms. But Chloe, much of the financial stress people feel today seems linked to bigger economic forces. Is it fair to put all the focus on individual coping?
That's a critical point, Grace, and something highlighted in the analysis from Perplexity API. Many people face huge systemic pressures, wages not keeping up with the soaring costs of housing, healthcare, education, predatory lending, weak social safety nets. These create chronic stress. For example, Perplexity API notes 56% of young adults say financial stress harms their mental health, often tied to these larger issues. And a 2025 analysis from Purdue University, cited via Perplexity API, found chronic financial insecurity doubles the likelihood of poor physical health and leads to 4 times higher rates of stress-related problems.
So individual strategies might not be enough when the whole system feels stacked against you?
Exactly. Experts cited by Perplexity AP argue that while individual coping helps manage distress, it doesn't fix the root causes in the economic structure. There's a real concern that focusing only on individual resilience shifts the burden unfairly and masks the need for bigger changes. It can make people feel like it's their personal failing, rather than a societal problem.
It sounds like we need more than just individual sense and sensibility here. What kind of larger changes are being discussed?
The consensus reported via Perplexity API points towards systemic reforms, things like living wage policies, real debt relief programs, more affordable housing and healthcare, stronger unemployment support, and better mental health coverage that's integrated with financial help. Even employer-based financial wellness programs are seen as a potential step. The idea is a dual approach: support individuals, yes, but also fix the underlying economic issues.
A complex problem requiring both individual resilience and systemic solutions. Chloe, thank you for breaking down this important connection for us.
You're welcome, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. Following the death of Pope Francis on April 21st, the conclave to elect a new pope is scheduled to begin on Wednesday, May 7th. The 138 cardinals under the age of 80 will gather in the Sistine Chapel, which will be swept for electronic devices to ensure secrecy. The cardinals, who reside at Santa Marta House during the process, will vote up to 4 times daily, needing a 2/3 majority to select the next pontiff. This pre-conclave period allows cardinals to discuss potential candidates and build consensus, though historically, frontrunners often don't win the election. In media news, Bill Owens, the executive producer of 60 Minutes, resigned last week. Correspondent Scott Pelley addressed the departure on Sunday's broadcast, stating Owens stepped down amid tensions over editorial interference from parent company Paramount Global, which is currently navigating a merger with Skydance Media. Pelley said Owens felt he no longer had the independence needed, citing new corporate oversight measures, including the appointment of former CBS News president Susan Zirinsky as interim executive editor, as compromising the show's autonomy. Pelley framed the resignation as a defense of journalistic integrity, occurring amidst heightened scrutiny due to a lawsuit from Donald Trump and the pending merger approval. Former President Trump announced on social media his intention to, quote, bring back Columbus Day from the ashes, criticizing Democrats for undermining Christopher Columbus's legacy. However, Columbus Day remains a federal holiday, celebrated on the second Monday in October, though many cities and states now observe Indigenous Peoples Day instead, a holiday officially recognized by President Biden in 2021. While Trump framed it as a reinstatement, only Congress can alter federal holidays. Over 200 cities and several states have replaced or now recognize both holidays. We also have sad news from the entertainment world. Drag performer Jiggly Caliente, known from RuPaul's Drag Race Seasons 4 and All-Star 6 as well as appearances on Pose and Broad City, has died at the age of 44. Her family announced that Bianca Castro Arabejo, her real name, passed away peacefully on Sunday morning, surrounded by loved ones. Her death followed a severe infection that required hospitalization and the amputation of most of her right leg. She was also a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race Philippines and is remembered for her infectious energy and authenticity. And in politics, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has reportedly called out fellow Democrats, labeling them do-nothing for what he sees as a failure to effectively push back against former President Trump. While specific details of this recent comment weren't immediately available, Pritzker has a history of strong rhetoric against Trump and has previously urged more assertive action from his party. The governor is considered a potential contender for the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Pro 2.5 Experimental, Gemini Flash 2.0, Perplexity Sonar Pro, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.